What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Trust Your Board podcast. My name's Stephen Wright, joined by Mr. William Monroe. How you doing, Will?
Doing great after another Eagles victory here. Only unbeaten team left in the league. 6-0.
Yeah.
At the bye week, too.
Very true. I think, what was it, like 2 weeks ago, I think I had said the Eagles had, or I don't think I said it to you, not on the podcast, the Eagles had the easiest schedule, I think, rest of the year.
Yeah, division-wise,
Does that ring a bell?
They're playing, well, the divisions they're playing, and then, not coming in first place. Like the Cowboys did help them not, get a really tough schedule, but I think record-wise that might be changing just based on how good the Giants and Cowboys have been as well. But it looks like the rest of the schedule opens up.
Yeah, looking Pittsburgh, week 8.
Mm-hmm.
You never really know what you're going to get out of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I mean, that defense played really well this weekend after being pretty bad the first few weeks.
Yeah, so hard to say there. Houston will be a win. Washington will be a win. Indy's another team, like you assume win, but you don't really know what you're going to get.
Yeah, who's healthy there at the time.
Green Bay looks bad, but that's week 12. Maybe they have figured it out by then. Yeah. Tennessee, probably a win. Giants, week 14. Are they still good? Who knows? But right now, yeah, that looks competitive. Mm-hmm. Chicago should be a win. Dallas will be tough. New Orleans after that, probably a win, but I mean, they will have their wide receivers back by then. Yeah. And then the Giants again. So, yeah, definitely one of the easier schedules, but plenty of, bumps along the way here.
Yeah, and you never know what's going to happen, right? And I think that's a lot of times why I've heard a lot of teams say that they'd prefer to get the quote unquote easier games earlier on the schedule, because a lot of times teams that you expect to be good, don't end up being good toward the end of the season. Teams that are bad, maybe you're playing younger players and a little more competitive. So I've definitely heard kind of a lot of people say they'd prefer to have the schedule kind of front loaded with easier games, get yourself on a roll, but then, get those easy games out of the way while they are still easy, and maybe have the harder games till later, because you never know what happens with injuries.
Yeah, 100%. And you do want some tough ones along the way. You don't want to get into the playoffs coasting. I think that happened to Eagles. Maybe the first year we worked together, I remember everyone being hyped for the Eagles for the playoffs. And I looked at their schedules. You guys have beaten one good team in the past 10 weeks. And then sure enough, they went to playoffs, lost the first week.
Yeah, it was like 13 or 14 probably. 2013.
Yeah, something like that. So you want some tough games to measure yourself. You don't want to go to the playoffs, face a 49ers team or something like that, and punch in the mouth. So yeah, very interesting. So yeah, good news for Will. But bad news on the fantasy front, because we had a handful of injuries this week, didn't we?
Handful of injuries, and it's the first full bye week, so I think we're definitely noticing, whether it was a down week for scoring, but also taking out some key teams and key players. That added to it, but it definitely seemed like a lot of injuries, and it seemed like a down week in scoring. Yeah,
and the bye weeks continue when you have. Just looking at the teams, Diggs, AJ Brown, Jefferson, Kupp, all on bye.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of other players on those teams, but there's 4 of your top wide receivers in the league on bye week. It's going to create a need for sure. So we're looking. You ready to jump right into running backs here?
Yeah. We'll just kind of shout out bye weeks here coming up. We got the Bills, Eagles, Vikings, and Rams. So quite a few fantasy assets that people are using and starting that will be on bye this week. And our Thursday night matchup is the Saints and the Cardinals. So keep an eye out for that, for any injuries or, things that you need to decide on earlier on.
Yep, 100%. So let's go ahead. We'll jump right into it. Running backs, not a ton to talk about.
Yeah, unfortunately. It really wasn't. I think that was really the one that was really down. The receivers, there were still some scoring, but running backs looking through that just did not seem like the week that you're used to seeing when it comes to the amount of running backs and the scores that are put up.
Yeah, so to knock 2 of them off right off the bat, we had Kenyon Drake with a big week, only rostered in 5% of leagues. But we don't know what's going on with Dobbins. Gus Edwards is due to return at some point here. I think Justice Hill as well, although I'm not really that concerned about him. We haven't seen too much about him, but It looks like Drake would be the big winner, but you don't know who else is coming back. Maybe you get a week out of him. Maybe you get absolutely nothing out of him. Do you think he's worth bidding on?
Probably would prefer to bid on Edwards over Drake. I mean, both are low owned. 15% rostered for Edwards and 5% for Drake. So I wouldn't mind putting, bidding on both, especially with Dobbins getting injured. I believe it's another knee injury. Don't think there's word on the severity, but people think it could be a few weeks. So I think it's definitely wide open as to who would be the guy. I mean, maybe it's Drake for another week, but I think when once Gus comes back, I think he eventually will take over. So I would lean, throwing more fab toward Gus Edwards. What about you?
Same. And I think you could probably get him cheaper right now. Depending on your pocket, like some podcasts are throwing his name out there, but he hasn't played all year. There's definitely people in your league that have forgotten about him, where Drake just popped off. So, he's that slide under your radar, potentially throw a few bucks and end up getting him. Know your league, maybe not, but yeah, that would probably be my bet as well between the two.
Yeah, a couple other options here. We've got Mark Ingram, 23% rostered. Rashad White, 34% rostered. And then Dan Jackson, 43% rostered. Did get injured, but had a really good game. So we'll see what his injury severity looks like. Any of those interest you, Steve?
Not particularly. Ingram, he's a fine handcuff if Kamara goes down, and we'll get some uses while the wide receivers are gone. He's got to use someone on the team. But as they start coming back, not super interested. Rashad White's a good handcuff, but his usage or handcuff, or if you don't have Fournette, just a gamble on Fournette going down. But his usage isn't anything worthy of a start. Jackson clearly has been, but we don't know about the injury, and you gotta assume Jonathan Taylor will be back this week. They were thinking he could be back the first week. I can't see him missing 3. But if Jackson's playing and JT is not, then that's a huge win against Tennessee. Like, that would probably be the bet. I just don't know. It would be hard to put a decent fab offer on him and then maybe never get him again for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at just this week, it's probably Drake. But as you mentioned with those 3, I think all 3 of those are excellent handcuffs to have for your player, or if you have the open roster spot, even if you don't have that running back that's ahead of them. All 3 of those guys seem like they would be in line to get the line share of the work should the running back ahead of them be injured. One thing I think, for us, we have JT in Dynasty League and didn't get Jackson. He'd be someone I'd be interested in keeping an eye on to see if he is cut when he's, because he's injured, because I think he could be, the handcuff that I think everyone was trying to figure out who would be the Indianapolis handcuff.
Yeah, 100%. He's earned that role, I'm sure. Not that, if Hines was playing, he'd still be siphoning off the pass catching work, I'm sure. But as far as like pure running back, yeah, I think he's earned that role.
Exactly. And we'll see how long Hines is out with the concussion.
Yeah. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the new protocol.
Yeah. I mean, that was last Thursday, so didn't play this week.
Yeah. We'll have to wait and see, I guess. That's about it for running backs, right?
Yeah, really not too much out there. I mean, there's other guys that are rostered more heavily. Maybe Mike Boone. We'll see what he does tonight. Latavius Murray, another guy, plays here tonight in Denver. So both of those guys, depending on how they do, probably could have some potential ad value. Here come waivers on Tuesday, but as we're recording here, we won't have too much insights on that. So keep an eye on how the carries are split up there in Denver.
Yep, agreed. Taking a look at the wide receivers here, Will. Got a nice little list. If you don't mind, I think Arizona was a good spot to start.
Yeah.
We got Hollywood, maybe down for the entire year. Got Rondale Moore out there, 46% rostered, and maybe the return of Greg Dortch. 5% rostered. Interested in either of those to help fill that role? They added Robbie Anderson. What do you think of that whole situation?
Yeah, I think I don't know which one I'd want to play here this week, right? And I think really any of them you could roll the dice on. I think Robbie is the most interesting from a long term perspective because I feel like he would fit that role that Hollywood was playing,
Yeah,
especially
agreed.
with you have Hopkins coming back. He's going to take over a lot of that intermediate, and he could still go downfield, but like more of the bigger body receiver. That I'm sure he would have maybe siphoned a little bit away from Hollywood, as Hollywood was kind of all over the field. But the deep threat portion of the Hollywood's game, I think Robbie would really fill in for well. I think Dortch is interesting. I probably will put him at the end of my waiver list. In a lot of leagues, just get him on the roster, throw him on the bench for the week, see how he looks. Maybe they roll him right back in without Hollywood there and with targets available. But he's someone I would be interested in. Rondale Moore, it's just so inconsistent. They use him so much around the line of scrimmage. Obviously the highest roster percentage here at 46, so not a bad option, but it's just not someone I've ever been truly interested in. What are your thoughts on these three?
I'm really not interested in any of them. Not that interested in Moore. We just haven't seen enough for me to rely on him. And his role is just different from Hollywood, so I don't think it's going to matter. Like you had said, I do think Anderson probably fills the Hollywood route better. But by the time he learns the playbook and establishes a rapport, it's gonna be the end of the season.
Could take some time.
You see wide receivers go to new teams in the offseason and that first year is down. So like mid-season, I'm really not expecting anything. But the opportunity's there. And then Dortch, I think he is just the Rondale Moore replacement. Where if Rondale went down, then Dortch would probably be pretty good. But I don't think he's going to fill the Hollywood role. So I'm not really interested in any of them, which is crazy to say.
Yeah,
but it is what it is.
Yeah. Going to another team that we've got a couple here on. We've got the Lions. Josh Reynolds, 32% rostered, and Jameson Williams also 32% rostered, both coming off the bye week. So I think probably seeing more of an uptick in Williams because of getting closer to a return. And Reynolds, I'm sure a lot of people had to make some cuts for other starts, but he's played well, and the numbers that you see from Reynolds have been definitely even startable really. Any interest in Reynolds or Jameson Williams?
Yeah, probably Reynolds. A worrisome start this week against Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe he's the benefactor if, Amon-Ra comes back and he's the one shut down, maybe Reynolds gets, more work. Jameson Williams, a good play, but I haven't seen any news on him. Have you?
No, nothing major. And they definitely want to slow play it. I think if you want to gamble on him, I don't know that the NFI tag here that Yahoo has him on allows you to put him on an IR if your league has an IR. I'm sure if it does, I'm sure someone already has him there. But if I think if you want to have a shot on him, you probably got to add him in the next couple weeks because once rumors start popping up that he's a few weeks away, he'll be rostered in places, and he does have the upside to be a game changer, especially when fully healthy. But it's just you don't know yet. So that's why I add him here is if he's someone you really want to be on that hill when the flag goes up, I think you're going to have to add him in the next few weeks, probably this week or next week.
He's a good one. If you have an open spot, you're looking at waivers, you don't see anything, go ahead and grab him up and see maybe if news comes out later this week or next week and then you're holding. If you can't afford to hold that spot, then, you could be stuck holding him for 4 weeks or more. Like you don't know.
Yeah.
So I probably want to grab him in that instance if you're fighting for your life. But yeah, a good time to bring him up for sure.
Yeah, and then the other team we have kind of doubled up here. Two receivers here in Indianapolis that had a good week. Alec Pierce, who I think a lot of people hoped and expected. We saw him step up with a pretty good game here. Looks like he had 12.4 points here in half points. 3 catches, 49 yards, and a touchdown, but 7 targets is great. And then one maybe unexpected, Paris Campbell came out and had a heck of a game. I believe he had 12 targets. He was like up there for the top target leader of the week.
Yeah, well, when you
11.
throw 56 passes,
Yeah, I mean that
they
helps.
gotta go somewhere.
Yeah, 11 targets, 7 catches, 57 yards, and a touchdown. So, do we believe in either of them? Do we want to add either of them? Campbell only 2% rostered. Pierce, up to 38 after the last week or two.
Definitely not adding Campbell. Like we got years and years to say, no. But Pierce has looked good for multiple weeks now. Definitely worth an add. I think if Pittman were to go down long term, I think Pierce is start worthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be definitely interested there. How about you?
Yeah, I think he's someone I did add in at least one league, and it's good to see him get injured or get used and worked in again. I think he had the game-winning touchdown, I believe. So the stat line, they scored very, very close to the end. Like it was kind of like a heave almost. I want to say it was like 30, 40 yards with almost time expiring. So his day was not looking great prior to that touchdown. But did salvage it there with a big crucial touchdown.
We got some other people on the list here. Will anyone you are interested in here?
Yeah, I'll call out Wanda Robinson, somebody I think a lot of the fantasy community was clamoring to add the last week, and he played well enough. I think it's his first week back, if I remember correctly. Definitely was involved. Let me see target count here. Looking at 4 targets, 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown. So you'd like to see the target count and the catches go up a little bit, but first week back, I think it's promising to see that. Gallup, 50% roster to someone I think that definitely needs to go up, especially with the chance of Dak coming back soon. Didn't play great against the Eagles, so maybe that'll keep him available. Maybe won't have his fab be really high, but he's someone that I'd be looking to add and stash here because in the coming weeks, maybe 2-3 weeks from now, we could be very happy with throwing him in the flex with a Dallas offense that's moving a little bit more.
Yep, 100% agreed on both fronts there.
Yeah, and then I guess one more just to touch on because they had a really good game. Chase Claypool, Steve, any interest there? We believe in that he is back.
Not really, no. Yeah, I would need to see multiple weeks. I think the offense isn't good enough to support 2+ people. So I feel like it's just going to bounce around. Like Deontay Johnson's probably pretty stable. I don't know if what the blow up games would be like, but he's probably stable. And then Claypool will have a week, Freiermuth have a week, no one will have a week. Pickens might have a week. I think it's just going to bounce around. So if you want to roster him as like I need a flyer on a guy, then in the right matchup, sure, but no one I'm going to add the hope to rely on really.
Yeah, I agree. 41% rostered, so I'm sure that's kind of has been on the way down, and that may spike back up after a big week here. But 7 targets, caught all of them for 96 yards and a touchdown. Also had an 8-yard carry. Coming off of, I think, 7 targets the week before, 9 targets the week before, 5 catches, 50 yards. So, he's been decent. But as you said, the team, the offense just hasn't been great. I believe Pickett sustained a concussion, so it looks like we're going to be going back to Mitch Trubisky at least for a week. So yeah, just maybe a deeper league ad stash, but not someone that I'd be looking to start this week.
Perfect. Looking at our tight ends here, Will. Never a great place to go, but we are seeing some work out of Tunyon, Bellinger. Do they top your list or?
Yeah, I think Tunyon's got to be the top one here. He had a good game. I think it could have been better, but 12 targets, 10 catches, 90 yards. I think he just missed a touchdown. So, that could have been a huge week. But when you're seeing 12 targets, I mean, that's exactly what you want to see. Now, he hasn't hit that mark. I think he's only been over 6 targets once this year before it. So, you hope it's not a mirage. But, with Randall Cobb getting injured, we'll keep an eye out on this, the severity of that. He, could be a big benefactor in a team that's looking for weapons, looking for consistency when it comes to the weapons they have.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely, at least partially reliant on Cobb's return for Tunyon.
Mm-hmm.
If he's out, then Tunyon's great. If he's playing, Tunyon could still be good. So yeah, he's top of my list. Bellinger's pretty fine too. As long as all the weapons are gone. We talked about Wandell and his return, and can step in that role eventually. In theory, Tony can return. Once we get like those two back, I'd imagine Bellinger starts flying off. But until then, he's a decent guy. You can probably grab up for cheap and just toss in there.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at Gesicki and Ingram and some other ones here. Both are kind of like you're hit or miss. Gesicki had a huge day, but I don't think he's seen near that many targets all year. Ingram has been a little bit more consistent, but I don't think we've really seen as many boom games. Cade Otton, someone I'm interested in keeping an eye on, especially with Cam Brate fortunately going down with another concussion. May see him out for a while. Obviously, no Gronk. The Kyle Rudolph, I believe, was there for bits. They don't really have much else in the tight end department, so he may be forced into it. And he had 3 targets, 2 catches, 23 yards, but that was in probably only a half because he had majority of the game, in which Cam Brate was the starter there. So interested to see what Cade Otton could do as a rookie tight end there for Tampa Bay in more of an extended usage.
Yeah, agreed. I think he could definitely be pretty interesting. A rookie, your rookie tight ends tend not to do a lot, but you're just taking a dart throw, right? And if you're going to take a dart throw, you might as well take it on, Tom Brady, who likes a tight end position.
Yeah. And then moving on to QBs here, got a couple streaming options, Steve, for you. We've got 4. Any of these entice you? Jameis Winston will be going up against the Cardinals this week. Jimmy Garoppolo going up at home versus the Chiefs. Mariota is going to be in Cincinnati, and Matt Ryan, coming off of 50-plus passes, going to be going to Tennessee.
Yeah, the 2 to remove immediately, one would be Jameis, whether he's even back or not. You could slot Dalton in there. It's still removing him. I just don't know what that situation is. Mariota, it's very hard to trust. 14 passes last week. The week prior, he didn't do anything for fantasy. Or 2 weeks ago, I forget. But there's just not a lot there. So it comes down to Jimmy G and Matt Ryan. I like Matt Ryan's matchup more against Tennessee, so I think I lean that way. But as always, maybe a nice shootout kind of game between San Francisco and Kansas City would be nice. But I think I'm going to lean on Ryan a bit over Jimmy G. What about you?
Yeah, I think I would. I'm see Mariota is interesting as well. I think he's played well. He's one I think that I may put in there, like kind of like in the Matt Ryan realm, in the Jimmy G realm. Obviously, tough matchup going to Cincinnati, but I mean he's got weapons. He's been able to utilize them. So I think he might be the guy I'd be looking for, especially because he's like the least, the least owned or least rostered here. So I think you could get him probably pretty cheap, coming off of a big game. Obviously, had a rushing touchdown at 50 yards, but that's kind of the hope that he's going to be able to provide some of that for you as well. And it seems like they're trying to work in some of these passing weapons that they haven't been. So he would be my favorite, actually, out of the bunch here, Mariota.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. We'll move to the defensive streamers here, Will. We got the Patriots versus Chicago. We have the Bengals versus Atlanta, the Jets at Denver, and the Broncos versus the Jets.
Yeah, so that's an interesting Broncos versus Jets game. I mean, obviously, Jets defense has been playing well. Broncos offense is not, but there's a lot of weapons there, so I don't really know what I make of that. I think the Patriots is, going to be the one that I would look to first and foremost, but they're 64% rostered. So if you can get them, great. Probably not around. Broncos 66% rostered, probably not around. Bengals and Jets, I think, are probably the top 2 streaming options here. Bengals at home versus Atlanta, and the Jets on the road in Denver. I think those are probably the 2 that I like out of the all of the defenses really available under that 60% threshold.
Yeah, and this is what it is when you got bye weeks. And, 4 teams are on bye, and if you're streaming defenses, it's kind of hard to get some solid options here. I'd probably go with the Bengals. I'm with you. Like the Jets, the whole thing is interesting. You can probably get the Jets for super cheap, but I can't trust them. So
Yeah.
I'll stick with the Bengals, I guess.
All right. So that about wraps it up here for our waiver show, Steve. Any other last things to touch on for the folks at home?
No, that is about it. Tune in on Thursday for the start sit episode of the week. And until then, folks, trust your board.